We can learn a lot from our grandparents. I enjoy learning all about what grandma and grandpa did back in the day. It's always interesting to see how they sacrificed, how hard they worked, the stories that they can tell, some of the weird food they had to end up eating, and just how generally cheap stuff was back then. Expensive to them at the time, but as we look back now, inflation, it was rather cheap. So today on Money Article Monday, I found an article called 30 Ways to Save Like Grandma Did. We can definitely learn from our grandparents. So let's dive into this article and see what it has to say. This article I found on MSN.com, and as always, I will have these articles linked below. It was written by Erica Sansone, I believe that's how you say it, on May 20th, 2021. And again, it's called 30 Ways to Save Money Like Your Grandma Did. The first tip is to buy from the farmer. I love buying from the farmer, especially farmers markets. Now, the one thing you have to be careful of is you go to some farmers markets and they have produce that, or fruits and vegetables that you go, well, it's not really in season here for that. They still ship them in. So it's not necessarily that it's been grown here locally, meaning it didn't have to travel for 5,000 miles to get here. So I think it's funny when you see a truck, a big, commercial truck full of produce pull up at a farmer's stand or farmer's market. I'm thinking, yep. Those people think they're getting something different than they would at Aldi or another grocery store, but it's the same thing. You have to make sure you go and you find the authentic farmers markets where you've got the people who really did grow the stuff sitting there, and then that's when you make the biggest impact on it. But she talks about in this article, cutting out the middleman saves money, certainly. And also, if it's a shorter distance for that farmer to bring their vegetables, then you've got the cost of transportation that you're not having to pay for. The driver, the truck, the gasoline to get it there. The second one is learn basic sewing. If you get a hole in your sock or tear a seam, don't toss the garment, fix it. Picking up a few basic sewing techniques, such as how to hem pants or sew on a button, saves money in the long run. You can learn so much of this stuff on YouTube. Sewing really is not that difficult. It is very simple to sew some things up. I actually do have a sewing machine, but sometimes I will opt not to even worry about getting that big thing down and moving the thread all the way through it, and I will just hand sew something up. I can't tell you how many of the little dolls and toys and stuffed animals that I have sewn up over the years. First with my previous dog who passed away in 2014. She could tear up any kind of a toy. So I would sew up, I don't know how many toys just for her. And then now with my daughter, if something, comes off of a stuffed animal or a doll, just sewing that up, those skills do come in handy. So, check out YouTube if you don't have any basic sewing skills. The third one is preserve perishable foods. Bought too many berries at the farmer's market? Don't want those cucumbers your neighbor gave you getting soggy? Learn different ways to preserve food just like our parents did so nothing spoils. Now, for me, I have still never preserved food. I really, really need to try. So my goal is to something that we get out of our garden, try to preserve something that comes out. I'm not sure what or how I would do it, but let's see if I can figure out how to do that. The fourth tip is to make meat an accent. I was just talking about this yesterday to somebody, how it's so sad and odd, and I don't know when this became a thing, but people think they need to eat meat at every single meal. You think you need to have meat at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You think that your meat needs to be the star of your plate, meaning the biggest portion. It does not, and you will be fine if you don't eat meat at 1, 2, or 3 meals in a day. So let's see what this article says. It says meat shortages meant our grandparents had to stretch their rations to get more out of every portion. The cookbook she was referencing earlier suggests making meat a supporting player, not the focus of the meal. Absolutely. So she talks in here, try dishes such as French lentils with sausage, pasta soup, savory stew that's heavy on vegetables and light on animal protein. There are so many things that you could do where you just have a little bit of meat if that's what you choose. If you did tacos, fajitas, quesadillas, where you just have a little bit of chicken on top or a little bit of steak, if that's what you're into. If you're not used to not eating meat, just try it on like a meatless Monday, this will make a huge difference in your budget. The next one is use some elbow grease. Our grandparents didn't have a cabinet full of expensive products to clean the house. You know, the one that's for the mirrors, and then there's one for the glass. And there's that long thing that you can use to clean the ceiling fans. And you got the toilet bowl scrubber. And then you got the special thing that cleans the tub. And the special thing that cleans the shower. And then you got the special multi-purpose cleaner that you can use on some things, but not on others. You better be careful. And then you've got the tile cleaner for the bathroom. The wood floor cleaner for the... You get where I'm going with this, right? They didn't have that stuff back then. She says that they always tried using basics that you had on hand, such as bleach for disinfecting, baking soda for light scrubbing, and vinegar and water with a dash of dishing liquid for windows. For most cleaning, that's all you had, along with a dose of elbow grease. The next one is make soup more often. The article says soup is filling and cheap, and it's perfect for your slow cooker so you don't have to think about dinner. And that way you don't have to turn on an oven and heat up the house during the summertime. And some people say, oh, I don't want soup during the summertime, it's hot. Well, here's what I have to say about that. Why are certain foods for the summer and certain foods for the winter? I don't get it because, you know, let's say your logic is soup is not for the summertime because it's hot. Well, you know, are you eating a cold hot dog or hamburger or cold fried chicken or cold French fries? I don't think so. You're eating those in the summertime and they're hot too. So I don't see why you can't make a soup. Soups can be very inexpensive and they're also great to make ahead. They actually freeze really, really well and you can put them in the freezer and not take up a ton of room. Now, as always, I do not read all of these articles, everything in the article to you. You can check it out down below. If I read everything in these articles, it would just go on and on forever. So that is why I always leave the link for you. So the next one is eat in. Our grandparents did not rely on takeout to feed their families. Yeah, they didn't have Uber Eats back then, did they? You don't have to make everything from scratch, but getting into the habit of not eating out all the time is a huge money saver. So let's say you had a week's worth of dinners, so 7 dinners, and you spent $70, okay? That's $10 per dinner. Well, if you go out to dinner, how expensive is it? It's usually at least $10 per person. So you could spend the equivalent of at least, at someplace like Chick-fil-A for a family, half of your weekly grocery budget. So if you eat out more than 2-3 times a week, gosh, at the amount of money that you're spending and that you're losing and not saving. So, I mean, grandma did not have the opportunity to stop and get fast food anytime she wanted, depending upon how old you are, but my grandma did not. The next one is save tidbits. I have fond memories of Gran's can of sequins and buttons that she hoarded from the craft projects we made together. Save all of those fun scraps, bits of ribbon, cute little glass jam jars, broken costume jewelry, little cardboard berry containers. Toss everything in a plastic container and you'll be surprised at how many creative uses you'll find for these treasures. Now, I'm not about that life. I don't like saving all that stuff because I'm kind of more minimal in that way. If it doesn't have a use or purpose right now, then I get rid of it. That's just my opinion. The next one is give DIY gifts. My grandmother was talented with needle arts and loved creating afghans, handmade kitchen towels, and lace tablecloths for people she loved. Homemade gifts are more memorable anyhow, and everybody has a special talent. Bake a plate of brownies, give a coupon for a weekend of pet sitting, create a memory book of old photos, or enlarge and frame one. I think that's a great idea. Even the photo thing is such an amazing idea, but I think with the birth of Etsy, that online, where a lot of things are handmade, you saw the kind of shift back to more DIY handmade things versus back in, I believe, like the late 80s to 90s when things started to be manufactured so quickly and cheaply. I think whenever Etsy came around, whenever that was, it really started to change back where handmade things are just so special, whether that's, like she said, a handmade baby blanket or something that's embroidered or you hand poured a candle, whatever it may be. But those little handmade items to me are more special than something random you can go pick up at Marshall's or TJ Maxx. The next one I have mentioned too, find the right store. Your grandma probably had a favorite butcher and a single grocery store where she shopped. My mom knew everybody at the grocery store where she shopped. I mean, on a personal level, they chatted. It's fine to do the same and shop 1 or 2 stores with the best prices on the kinds of foods for your family consumes regularly. That is such a smart idea. I've also mentioned that as well. So what I said is the reason that that's also good is when you're in a random store that you really don't know the layout, you end up going down aisles that you didn't even think, because you don't know where things are. And sometimes we still have that impulse to grab something that looks interesting, versus if you know the layout of the store and you know where your favorite things are, then you're gonna head straight to those areas. You're gonna have your blinders on and go and get those items. You're not gonna be looking around everywhere trying to find the specific thing in a store that you're not familiar with. The next one is use more beans and lentils. My grandma's cookbook says that they're cheap, filling, and nutritious, containing good stuff like fiber, B vitamins, and plant-based protein. I eat a lot of beans and lentils. I love chickpeas. I use chickpeas to make a faux chicken salad, or like a faux tuna salad, that kind of thing you put on sandwiches or crackers. I'll link that video down below too. I even have a video where I use chickpeas to make crab cakes. They taste just like crab cakes. And crab meat is super expensive. But this says use more beans and lentils. Figure out what you can do. You can also use lentils to make sloppy joes. You just buy the can of sloppy joe stuff mix, or can of sloppy joe sauce, and you make lentils, and then you can chop up some peppers and onions and put it in and make it a little more hearty, and that you just act like that's the meat, and you really don't tell a difference. And I'll tell you why. Because most people, when they eat the meat, they put something on it. You don't just typically eat boiled chicken, do you? Or a hamburger with nothing on it. You put stuff on it. So it's almost hysterical to me, people talking about meat tastes so good. Well, it tastes good because of what you put on it. So if you could find a substitute and put the same thing on it and it'd be healthier and less expensive, then hey, win-win. The next one is learn to grow your own. Your grandparents probably had a backyard or victory garden during the war to supplement their rations. Even if it's just a few pots on a deck or a small plot next to the patio, try your hand at easy-to-grow veggies, such as lettuce, kale, or beans or herbs such as basil, parsley, or thyme, which are much easier to buy than those $5 bundles at the store, and you never actually end up needing how much you have to buy. Does that not irritate some people? If you have to go and buy fresh thyme or parsley or rosemary, you got to buy this big bundle, but your recipe only calls for just a little bit of the fresh stuff, right? So I never do that. I'll just use dried. It does the same thing. But, the amount you could save by just doing your own herbs, and you can do that in an apartment window. It's so simple. They make the best things now for people who do live in cities to still be able to grow vegetables on their patio. In the video where I talk about my chickpea salad, I also show you my garden. We are so excited. Our squash have already started to grow. We've got one about this big. I cannot wait to make my fried squash. It's going to be delicious. The last one I'm going to talk about is learn to bargain. Bargaining was a way of life in the old days, and it's still totally acceptable today in different places such as flea markets, estate sales, or independent shops. Don't be afraid to ask for a discount if you love something. The key is to make a reasonable offer and to do it respectfully. You may surprise yourself about how well it works. That's one of the biggest things. Ask for it respectfully, not in a snotty, unkind way. And that goes for pretty much anything in life. You get more bees with honey, that kind of, or miss more flies with honey, whatever that saying is. This is definitely true. Now, for bargaining, that's another thing you can do. Like if you have a plumber, electrician, or somebody, say, hey, if I pay cash, can I get a discount? Sometimes that will actually help as well. There are stores that do still, if you pay with cash or debit card, give you a cheaper price because they don't have to pay the credit card fee. I also say if you're going to a department store, I say, hey, is there a coupon? At some of these department stores, there is a coupon every single weekend. And most of the time, the cashiers have the coupon next to them that they can scan for each person. But sometimes they may not remember it, or maybe they just only scan it if you ask. So make sure you ask. Don't forget to check out this article linked below so you can see the other ones that I didn't go over. I went over about 2/3 of them. I hope you enjoyed them. I think it's always fun to look and see what other people think as far as grandma's tips and habits and ways to save money. It all leads to the overarching kind of theme behind some of the videos I've done already before about the Great Depression, and it just really, really interests me. I'm on my second book all about the Great Depression, mostly like just stories behind people and the realities and some of the statistics, and I'm finding it very interesting. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you back for more videos.